Good morning, listeners of Hot Topic. On this 18th day of October, 2023, we have a rapidly escalating situation to discuss today. Israel is preparing for a massive ground offensive in Gaza, while continuing its bombing campaign against Palestinians. The risk of a wider regional conflict in the Middle East is soaring. Iran, a known supporter of Hezbollah and Hamas, warns that if Israel does not cease these attacks on Gaza, the conflict will escalate further. Meanwhile, the U.S. is expressing its worry about this burgeoning conflict, dispatching 2 carrier strike groups to the eastern Mediterranean and putting 2,000 troops on ready-to-deploy orders. In a show of support, President Biden is set to visit Israel this week, but it might do little to diffuse tensions. The violence began with an attack by Hamas militants on a music festival and border villages in Israel, to which Israel responded with a bombing campaign on Gaza. The situation became even more volatile after an explosion at a hospital in Gaza, killing hundreds of people seeking refuge from Israeli strikes. Both Gaza and Israel are blaming each other for the explosion. The situation has worsened to the extent that the Palestinian Authority reportedly canceled a planned meeting with Biden during his Middle East visit. Israel is seeking to destroy Hamas, but faces threats from other groups in the region. Hezbollah in Lebanon has been trading fire with Israel, and rocket attacks have also come from Syria, where Iranian-backed militia groups operate. Analysts fear that Israel may soon have to contend with a multi-front war that could engulf the entire region. There's a lot to unpack here, but for now, those are the main headlines. We'll be diving deeper into this situation in our next segment. Stay tuned to Hot Topic for the latest on these unfolding events. Welcome back to Hot Topic, everyone. This is your host, Emily.
And joining you today, this is David Newstock.
We're here every day, bringing you the latest on all the pressing news topics. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Straight to the hot topics.
Can you explain why the risk for a wider war in the Middle East seems to be increasing so rapidly?
Absolutely. Currently, Israel is preparing for a large-scale ground offensive in Gaza and continues to bomb Palestinians. The militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon is also exchanging fire with Israel. Iran, which funds both Hezbollah and Hamas, has warned Israel that if the attacks on Gaza persist, it could lead to a wider conflict.
And how is the U.S. responding to these developments?
The U.S. is expressing concern by sending 2 carrier strike groups to the eastern Mediterranean and has put about 2,000 troops on ready-to-deploy orders. President Biden is also set to visit Israel this week, which could be seen as a show of strength.
But I heard that President Biden's visit might be called off. Is that true?
Well, that's not accurate. The Palestinian Authority reportedly canceled a planned meeting with Biden, but his visit to Israel is still scheduled. It's crucial to verify information from reliable news sources before believing rumors or unverified information.
Oh, I see. I apologize for the mistake. I'll be sure to double-check my sources in the future.
That's always a good idea. It's important to remember that the situation in the Middle East is extremely volatile and requires careful reporting. We'll keep our listeners updated with the most accurate and timely information on the matter.
Could you explain the analysts' concern about Israel potentially facing a multi-front war?
Certainly. The rate of fire with Hezbollah has been very intense. According to Jonathan Spire, director of research at the Middle East Forum, if Israel wasn't dealing with Hamas, this situation would have already escalated into a full-scale war. Hezbollah, backed by Iran, is treading dangerous waters.
And how does Israel's potential ground offensive factor into this scenario?
Israel's ground offensive is expected to significantly influence the trajectory of the war. If Israeli troops enter Gaza, Iran warns that Allied forces might have to intervene. This could turn the Gaza war into an extremely bloody and long conflict, heightening any risk of a wider regional war.
Is Iran directly involved in this conflict?
Iran has been meeting with senior leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas and has ramped up its rhetoric about the conflict. Iran's foreign minister, Hossein Amir-Abdollahian, has even suggested that Tehran might intervene to prevent what he calls a genocide of the Palestinian people.
But would Hezbollah, backed by Iran, be ready for a large-scale war?
While Hezbollah is a significant threat, it's currently suffering from an economic crisis and might not have the immediate means to wage a large-scale war. Furthermore, Iran might not want to risk drawing Hezbollah into the war, as it's their most powerful proxy group. But if Israel looks vulnerable in its fight with Hamas, Iran could still feel compelled to intervene.
What might be the implications of Iran engaging in a war against Israel?
Well, Iran is often talked about waging a major war against Israel. The question is whether it's worth it for Iran to risk Hezbollah, a critical front, in such a war.
And how do U.S. forces fit into this equation?
The presence of U.S. forces in the region adds another layer of complexity. It's unclear if the increased American presence would deter any conflict from escalating. However, unless the situation becomes serious enough, like Iran firing ballistic missiles at Israel, U.S. forces are not expected to intervene.
So what's the primary objective of the U.S. in this situation?
The main aim of the U.S. posture in the region is deterrence, warning potential adversaries not to take advantage of the conflict. Sabrina Singh, Pentagon's deputy press secretary, stressed this point at a recent briefing. She also noted that any U.S. intervention would require Congress's approval and is purely hypothetical at this stage.
What's Israel's stance on U.S. involvement?
The general agreement between the U.S. and Israel is that the Israeli people must defend themselves against regional adversaries, often using U.S.-supplied weapons, without direct American intervention. Israel has always been firm about handling its own affairs. Thanks for tuning in to Hot Topic today. We delved deep into some of the most pressing issues in our world today. Your input and engagement are essential to us, so please subscribe, activate the notifications, and interact with us in the comments. Spread the word about our podcast, whether it's in your group chats or at social gatherings. We value your support immensely.
And remember, we're here every day, bringing you the latest and most critical news. There's always something exciting on the horizon, so make sure you don't miss out.
We're grateful for your time and ears, and we can't wait to bring you more in our next episode.
Until then, remember our motto. Dave, stay in the loop, keep your eyes on the news, our channel's content will amuse.